skip to the next slide, and I'll go ahead and introduce myself a little bit, tell you more about myself. So I am Jennifer Siedman, and I am the director of, now we say, community engagement, because my role is expanded beyond just family engagements. But my primary role at Courageous Parents Network, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is in a bit, is actually to interact with families and patient organizations like yourselves. But really, my primary identity is as the mother of three. My middle son, Benjamin, had a rare genetic condition called Sanfilippo syndrome. That's him sort of wearing the yarmulke on the top left-hand corner just shortly after his diagnosis. And he passed away 10 years ago in 2014 from his disorder, which was progressively debilitating in nature, as you can tell by the picture of him then there in a wheelchair. A year after my son passed away, my husband and I were interviewed by who is the founder of Courageous Parents Network, which is a digital resource for families like ours. And I'll talk more about that in a little while. We were a family interviewed actually alongside with our palliative care doctor, because she was really instrumental in influencing the last 4 years of Benjamin's life and of our family journey. And as you can see here, this is a screen grab from one of the videos. Our primary asset on Courageous Parents Network is video interviews of families and clinicians. And this is a screen grab from one of my video segments. And I'm sure my other two children, Noah and Isabel, would hate that I put this picture up on the screen to show all of you, because it's probably embarrassing to them now, especially now that they're adults. But I really love this photo for a couple of reasons. One is it's just a regular moment in the parenting journey, just some siblings plunked in the tub having fun with bubbles, right? But what I really love it and why I chose it for today and for our time together was the words that are the title of this video. And they are my words that come directly from the interview. You can listen to it. And they really speak to what we're going to talk about today, that this wasn't happening to Isabel and Noah and to Benjamin. It was happening with them. And this was my mantra when Ben was alive. And I think it helped to keep my family strong, to think about things happening with one another instead of to one another. And in truth, even now in my bereavement, as my family is navigating that, these words remind me that whatever my family is facing, it's not happening to them. It's not happening to me. It's happening with them, with us. Okay, next slide, please. This is actually a quote by a palliative care pediatrician, and it is intended originally to talk to and speak with other physicians about the experience of puzzling or probleming along with a family. But this is probably, caring for your medically complex child is probably the most stressful experience you're facing, right? I know it was for me. And part of that stress is how it affects everybody in the family and how everybody handles that differently. So each person in a family, of course, is impacted in different ways at different times. Each of you during your journey need to discover new ways of coping and communicating for yourselves, ways to cope and communicate with one another, and to figure out how to be with one another as you do that coping, which is really hard work and requires constant attention. And so I really love this quote where it talks about learning to puzzle along with somebody. And in order to be able to do that, you have to learn to think about the word with as opposed to. So next slide, please. So I like to talk about the family path, and I like to use this image as a representation of the family journey. I want you right now to sort of think of the stones as members of your family, and the size of each stone your focus. At times your focus, or the largest stone, may be your medically complex child. At times it might be the siblings, At times, it might be your partner or spouse. Other times, it could be, of course, an extended family member that's occupying the biggest step in the path. Sometimes as you move along the path, there may be two or more stones side by side that are forcing you to divide your focus and cope with competing needs. And I think this is when it gets hard, the family path. But I also wanted to say here that it's important to remember that you yourself, as the caregiver, are also one of those steps in the path. And it's important to focus on yourself because you're a big part of the family journey and making that work. Next slide, please. At CPN, we've done some research, and we've identified 3 critical phases in the family journey. The first phase is one of orientation. This is the period when you're adjusting to something. Now, certainly the biggest period of adjustment for all of us was when we began to recognize that our child had complexities and that the future that we had envisioned probably wasn't the one that was going to be our reality. But times of orientation can also include things like a new medical development in your child, or just a school transition. Perhaps you've had a job change, or any other kind of typical transition that happens in families. This is the time and place where each family member needs time and space to get their feet under them, to adjust to whatever the new normal is. And it also happens to be the time period that is most likely to be emotionally charged during the cycle. So this is the really important time to think about being with your family members and how to incorporate that into your activities. The next phase in the cycle is a phase that we like to call navigating. This is when you begin to get your bearings. You've identified maybe the next medical clinician that you might need to include in your team. You might decide that you need a psychologist or a marriage therapist, or maybe you just need to, circle the wagons and get your family behind you. But this is when you start to identify what's going to help you move forward and navigate the new problem or new circumstance that's in front of you. And then once you have that all in place, what the research has borne out is that you go into a period which we call moving forward. And this is when you have confidence in your direction that your family's moving. And this typically means you're having also confidence in the decisions that you are making. It's in this big moving forward phase that we tend to feel like our families are strong, that we are being good partners, and we are being more specifically good parents to our children. But here's the thing about that path. And again, the research sort of bears this out. Not all families members are going to take these steps or move through this cycle at the same time or at the same pace. You each will be experiencing different feelings at different times, and our ways that we cope with them can be very personal. I know in my own family, understanding my families and building confidence in the decisions I was making meant that I needed to look down the path ahead to see what was coming. I needed to know, even if knowing was scary or sad. My husband was exactly the opposite. He lived in the moment. He didn't always want to look at my son's decline. Most certainly, there were times when this made our marriage rocky and our family path felt unsteady. You can listen to some of that. I talk about that in my video interview. And even my 2 children coped differently with their brother's illness. My oldest focused on advocating and fundraising and really used action to cope with the emotional components of what was happening and how he was processing. And my daughter, who was younger than Benjamin, had a tendency to be more mothering and tending to Ben's immediate needs as a mechanism for processing her own emotions. The research also bears out that this cycle of orienting, navigating, and moving forward repeats for families like ours in much greater succession. The real truth is every family has to go through this cycle, whether they have a medically complex child or not. But for us, this cycle is there's something that's always kicking us back, needing to orient once again, figure out what we need to navigate before we can go through a period of moving forward. And that moving forward period often is much shorter for us or more truncated than for families who are not facing life with a medically complex child. So it's really important to understand that the cycle repeats, that you may be in the orienting phase where some other members of your family are already moved along to navigating. And this is what sometimes makes the family dynamic feel kind of complicated in the family experience. Okay, next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor of Courageous Parents Network and the videos that are included on our website. This one is featuring a pediatric psychologist, and she talks about that feeling that you have sometimes when you're kicked back into the orientation phase. So I think if you hover over sort of the lower end, yep, there you go, it'll play.
Control is a huge factor, kind of at every level in this situation. Things feel completely out of control. That out of nowhere or out of symptoms came a diagnosis and came an illness, and then a whole situation between medical care and emotional care and anticipated events over which parents have no control. And so the wish, and over which the child has no control. So the wish for control, whatever it is, control when I take my medicine, when I can create a schedule, can I change the outcome, can I have control of who says what to my child, can I have control of which doctors I have, all become really important in a completely out of control situation.
So that gives you a little flavor of what you might find in a video on Courageous Parents Network. It also, I play this video because I think oftentimes during those periods of orientation, that's how we feel. We're sort of re-triggered back into a period where we feel out of control, and getting those support mechanisms to help you feel more in control, and recognizing that, again, family members are experiencing this at different times and at different rates. So what can you do at those times? I want to say that I wish I had a silver bullet that I could tell you what to do that would make that to create a solution for you, but I don't. But today what I can do is share with you a process and some tools to help you manage. And it is a process of really thinking about three critical questions at each step in the family journey. So during the orientation phase, it's really important to identify what has changed and is making you feel unbalanced. Now, sometimes this can be really obvious. It can be because, as I said, it could be because your child has acquired some new medical need. It can be because there's been a life change in your household, such as a job transition. But sometimes that thing that kicks you off is just an emotion. And so it will be harder to name. At CPN, we have this saying that says you have to name it to tame it. And it's a really good practice to get in to naming and identifying your emotions, even if it happens to be something that is tangible or more identifiable, like a change in your child's medical care. It's important to, alongside of that, name the emotions that are going along with it, because it can be the emotional parts of it that are actually making you feel unbalanced. And so at CPN, we like to say, name it to tame it. You can't get over what is bothering you unless you really have identified what the feeling it is that you have. Once you sort of identify that feeling and you start to feel like you know what you're trying to accomplish, you begin to move into the navigate mode. And this is when you start to ask yourself, what people or tools do I need in this moment? This could be a therapist. It could be a frank and honest conversation with your spouse. It could be that you need to talk to one of your other children because you're worried about them, or you need to talk to their teachers or the other people in their world. As rare parents, I find that we're often so good at identifying what medical supports our child's needs that we forget to use those same skills to access the support systems that our family needs. And this is why in a little while, I'm going to take some time to talk to you about palliative care, which I think is an awesome mechanism or resource for families like ours to talk through some of these questions. These are the kinds of questions that palliative care doctors will ask you when you work with them. Sometimes if you're a person like me, figuring out what you need can also happen in the reverse question. What people, things that I thought were supports are no longer meeting my needs. And sometimes, again, I find that we forget, depending on your personality, to think about the fact that there could be support mechanisms that may no longer be supporting your needs and therefore not feel like an opportunity for you to help navigate yourself forward. Um, this could be things like, maybe you have an extended family member who's not being helpful or offering advice that's unwarranted, and you need to be able to figure out how to have further time or distance away from them. Perhaps you've overextended yourself. This is a really common one, right? And you have too many obligations, or you're working too hard to please everyone. And sitting down and saying, this is not something that I can do right now. This is not going to help me navigate this new feeling of unbalance, can be a very good, effective thing to identify and allow you to move forward. And finally, in the moving forward stage, these two questions I feel are very critical to making the family experience smoother, which is asking yourself, what is working, or what do I feel confident about? Moving forward is often about recognizing and really consciously recognizing what is actually working. To take a minute to say, I'm doing the best that I can. My spouse or partner is doing the best that they can. My kids seem to be mostly thriving. And it's really important to name and celebrate those successes with one another. So it's not just important to know and identify that you're feeling confident in something, or you're recognizing that your spouse is doing the best that they can, but also to tell them, because that's how we get back to the with, when we share these emotions with one another. So celebrating one another is a really good way to help you when periods of the family dynamic start to feel bumpy and unbalanced. Next slide, please. So now that I've given you a little bit of a process that you could work with inside of internally in your family to talk about the cycle and to name emotions and to help you perhaps get over periods when things aren't going so smoothly, I also want to expose you to a few tools that you can use along the path. And more formally introduce you to Courageous Parents Network and what we have available for you. So here on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a screen grab of our homepage of Courageous Parents Network. We are a digital resource that provides materials, blogs, podcasts, informational guides. In fact, we also, as Caroline mentioned, Effie's guide on how to help people show up for you. We also have a guide on that you can give extended family members and friends. We offer guides, blogs, podcasts, video interviews, whole units. We're available in Spanish. You can watch video interviews of families talking about different decisions they've made, how they maintain their marriage, how they care for their well children, how to work with their medical team, how to think about shared decision making with your medical team or making a decision within your family. What is palliative care and how will it benefit your family? And so all of these resources to support your psychosocial and emotional needs can be found on Courageous Parents Network. Here on the right, we have a second website, and this is specifically for families who are caring for children with neurological conditions. So this would include my family, because my own son Benjamin had a neurologically based. Our website is called neurojourney.org, and unlike Courageous Parents Network, it also features some common medical complications that children with a neurologically based condition might encounter during their lifetime. So here you would read about things like seizures, You might read also about nutritional needs like feeding tubes and more of the
Can you hear
interventions
it?
that many of our
Good.
children face. The goal of both Courageous Parents Network and NeuroJourney is to provide you what is called commonly in the medical space anticipatory guidance. That's guidance about what might be coming ahead or guidance about what you might be experiencing. Most of us know this concept of anticipatory guidance because of those books that you might have bought when you were pregnant, what to expect when you're expecting, or what to expect in the first year. All of that is actually anticipatory guidance. And we feel that at Courageous Parents Network, if families are given the right guidance, we are equipping them to be the best parent that they can be. Next slide, please. So again, here, I thought I would speak a little bit about palliative care. At Courageous Parents Network, if we have a political agenda or one thing that we are very focused on and feel can make a real difference in the lives of the family experience, it is palliative care and how they can be a very good extra layer of support as you're going through the things that you are with your child. And many families feel frightened when they hear the word palliative care because they associate it with end of life. And I want to be here to assure you that that's not at all what palliative care is about. It's not really about end of life. It's really about living well as long as possible. And this is because a good palliative care clinician can help you balance both action and acceptance. And again, that balance is something you need when you're continuously going through that cycle of orienting, navigating, and moving forward. They are helpful and skilled communicators, so they can help you articulate your unique goals and philosophies of care. We're all, as we're caring for our children, developing our own philosophy of care, sometimes explaining that to other physicians or to other people who are in our world, sometimes even to other family members can be complicated. A really good palliative care clinician can help you be the interpreter between all of those audiences and help you not only in identifying your values, beliefs, hopes, goals, and all of those things, but communicating them to other people. Palliative care also facilitates agency and intentionality in the face of uncertainty. We're all facing sort of an uncertain future with our children, and that is, of course, unbalancing. And palliative care clinicians, because they are so good at listening and communicating, they often can help us find our strength in that uncertainty instead of our fear behind it. So on both Courageous Parents Network and in NeuroJourney, you will hear a strong palliative voice. And I feel like parents internally can develop their own palliative voice. Again, here on the left, you'll see resources that you might find on Courageous Parents Network. We have a guide on introducing pediatric palliative care. We have a very good, quick list of 7 things that you might not know about palliative care to help educate you, and a very simple video that explains exactly what palliative care is. In NeuroJourney, we've really embedded the palliative perspective in what we call the companion text all throughout the tool. And in that tool, it is marked by the little heart section or those sections in peach. And it is acknowledging the family experience. So a prime example from my own life that I would give is if you were to go into NeuroJourney and look at the GI chapter on motility, and you would be reading about your child's motility and the difficulties they might be experiencing in their GI tract. Alongside of it in the palliative context that is marked by the heart, you might read about things like how difficult it is to go out in public and change a larger sized child's diaper. And that it's okay to do things like give your child a suppository so that you can take your other 2 kids to the mall without having to worry about whether or not you're going to have to change that poopy diaper while you're out there. So it really acknowledges the real life experience that we're having along with these medical complications in NeuroJourney. So if you do have a child with what appears to be a neurological condition, I really suggest that you check out NeuroJourney, and at the very minimum, maybe just explore the hearted content of the tool. I think you'll find it very validating. Okay, next slide, please. End my presentation today, because I always like to leave a lot of time for question and answers. That's really where I'm better suited than in the presenting mode. But I wanted to tell you about another body of research that's been done out there, because I think it's really important as we're all trying to parent our children and maintain our relationships with our family members to think about this. But that body of research is something called studying the good parent beliefs. And I know that implies that there's bad parent beliefs, but that's not what this research is about. And it's been going on, this research, for more than a decade, primarily in families whose children had cancer. But researchers were curious to learn how parents of seriously ill children viewed themselves as parents, and if that viewpoint was static or evolving, and how a parent viewed themselves helped them as their child's condition worsened. And to find those answers out to those questions, they asked one simple question: what do parents of seriously ill children want their children to know before anything else? And what it revealed was something very simple, and something that you all already know. That what they valued most, and what they came out with at the end, what made them feel as though they were being a good parent to their child, is if they had confidence that their child felt loved. And I think all of us sitting here today can have that confidence that our child feels loved. And beyond anything else, when our family is experiencing those rocky periods, I think it's always good to remind ourselves that ultimately our feelings of being a good parent are uniquely attached to something as simple as just loving your child. And remembering that, I know, has helped me during rough periods of my parenting experience, my family experience. And I'm bolstered by the fact that now research actually bears it out, that it's the simple truth we all knew. And the researchers have given us sort of a data point to put behind it. So next slide, please. So this is how you can get in touch with me. Again, I encourage you to go on Courageous Parents Network. I encourage you to join if you'd like to read our newsletters. We also hold monthly webinars that are free and open to everyone. This month in December, we're talking about grief across the caring trajectory. So starting with anticipatory grief and ending with bereavement grief, but there's a whole lot of things in between that can feel very close to grief. In January, we will be having one on the sibling experience. And then in February, for those of you who perhaps have spent time in the NICU or extended periods in the PICU, you might enjoy the February event that we have. Again, they're free and open to anyone to attend. And anyway, that's my email address there. You're welcome to reach out to me. You can consider me a tool in your toolbox now. So thank you for having me today. And I appreciated the opportunity.